Okay, here we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dennis Todd, and we're going to do a 1 hour overview of Polaris Patron Services, which is going to be kind of a whirlwind look at what we call Power Pack, which is the web-based discovery tool. We're also going to look at circulation using the native Polaris client, which is the Windows application that Polaris has used traditionally. And we're also going to introduce you to Leap, which is our new web-based circulation client that's just been in general release for a few months now. Really exciting. So let's dive right in. I'm going to bring up my browser here. And the first thing I'm going to introduce you to is something that might even be a little more useful than the hour we spend here this morning. This we call the tour site. And the tour site is a site that we've put together that is wide open on the net. So you can come back here anytime you want. The URL is www.polarisdiscovery.com. And the idea is, on your own, you can come out and find all kinds of Polaris sites to visit and try out their catalogs. So come to the URL, and at this welcome page, if you move down, you'll notice there is a tag cloud here. And this is one of the best ways to sort of take a tour, preview different Power Packs on Polaris. And in fact, not just Power Pack, but Mobile Pack as well. If you look in the tag cloud, for example, we have a tag here for Canada. And if you click on that, then you're presented with a list of Canadian Polaris customers. This is not a complete list. This tour site only has something like 40 sites on it. But they're good representative sites. And the basic idea is you get a list of libraries. If you want to go see what Brampton's done out there in Ontario, we can click on the catalog link, and we're taken to Brampton's live Power Pack site. So that's really all there is to it. I close Brampton and come back, and we've got Track, a consortium right there in Alberta next to you. I think in a lot of ways very much like you. And if you want to see what they've done, you can click on Catalog, and same thing. You see their Power Pack. So this is a great place for you to come on your own and spend as much time as you want. I mentioned also that a lot of these libraries, most of them in fact, Guelph in Ontario, if we want to look at their mobile pack, we can click on that, and we actually get an emulator. And this is a live mobile pack session against Guelph's catalog, but you can certainly visit there with your smartphone. But this is kind of a nice, handy, easy way to get a feel for what mobile pack looks like. So the tour site. Come here, spend as much time as you want. One of the really nice things about the tour site is if you look down here on the very first page, there is an option to log in as a patron. So not only can you go to a bunch of different Polaris sites and try searching and see what they've done with different features in that, but you can actually go to my demo site where we're going to be spending some time. And if you follow this link, we give you some instructions for how to log in as a patron on my demo site. And if you just click login now, you'll go right on over and you'll be able to log in as a patron and look at all the patron empowerment stuff. So let's leave the tour site. Remember to write that URL down, polarisdiscovery.com, and come back here anytime you like. So I'm going to close the tour site. And we're now at Red Rock Public Library. This is my demo system. It's not a live site because we need to be able to do some fun and interesting things, especially like we just mentioned we let you do. We're going to be able to log in and see what the patron experience is like. But this is a very typical Polaris Power Pack. We've got a customized header up here, and it all depends on how you all arrange things. You might have one header just for the entire consortium, or each one of your libraries may have their own custom header. My demo database here, by the way, is very much a consortium like yours. I've got it set up as a combination of different county systems, different municipal systems, and all we have to do is be able to come up here. They're all sharing a single system, but they've done quite a bit of customization on their own. If I go over to Carnegie Central, and they've got their own custom header up there at the top. So, and then if I want to go back to Red Rock, then we can just come back down here, and we're right back where we started from. Typical features of a Polaris Power Pack. Over here on the left, we have what we call dashboards. A lot of the content here is populated automatically by Polaris. So you just say that you want new titles dashboard there, you want on order titles, and these things just populate. Nobody has to do any work to populate them. Most popular, same thing, most popular at your library. Now I wanted a Globe and Mail bestseller list, so I came in here and created bestseller lists, and that was an example of a dashboard where I put together the lists myself and maintain these items in that list. So it's kind of an example here on this welcome page of dashboards that Polaris populates and dashboards that you populate. You can even get kind of fun and creative in these dashboards and throw in graphical content. I've got a separate link to a blog where we do some reader advisory stuff, and you can link that there. But this is all stuff that I've done at my library. And again, you know, depending on how SILS sets things up, you'll be able to create those, or they'll help you with those, or you'll standardize some of those. It's kind of all up to you. Down here, we see what Polaris calls content carousels. And these are a feature, again, of the welcome page at each library. So I mentioned I'm in a consortium, but out here for Red Rock, I've got a content carousel that represents specific recommendations by just my staff. So these are things real easy to put together. Again, it can be content that Polaris pulls together, like new books, videos, ebooks, whatever, or it can be content that you pull together into a list and then simply say, I want that list to appear as a content carousel. So, probably the most important feature of the welcome screen is a quick search prompt. I think everybody has kind of become accustomed to the Google experience. So we're all used to coming to an initial page and having a prompt there, and this is sort of to express that convention. We can just come right there and say, where's Waldo? Press enter, and it does by default a general keyword search. And you see I've got a couple of results here, and there's Where's Waldo in Hollywood. So this is, we do have just a couple of results. The formatting here, the consortium will be able to decide how you want these laid out. I like to show how many copies I have at this library, how many copies I have throughout SILS. I like to put a summary here. This little snippet here is really handy, especially for your reference librarians. It shows you the part of the MARC record where the search term was found. And you can see that in italics. You know, we've all used online catalogs for a while. Sometimes you do a search and you wonder why certain things came up. In fact, the second one down here is a real good example. You searched for Where's Waldo and you say, why did Marvin Redpost come up? Well, right down here in the snippet, it shows you Where's Waldo is part of what is probably a contents note. So that's real handy. So this is the bibliographic summary. If we come over here and say more info, we get full bibliographic information. So I can look down through. There's full bib information, and it's not just full bibliographic information, but here are all of the individual copies at each of your locations. For each of your libraries, this list will be ordered the way that makes the most sense to that library. So for example, if I'm one of the branches at Regina Public, then my branch would probably show up first. Then I might have the other branches show up in order after that, and then the rest of the SILS libraries listed, so on. There's some neat features in Polaris Consortium. One of them is you will also get to decide whether you want to show all of your libraries in this list at once, or you could segment this list so that, for example, again, we'll use Regina as an example. Regina might have any one of its or all of its branches show initially, but only the Regina branches show initially. And then down here at the bottom, there would be a prompt that says, click here to see copies at other branches, or click here to see copies at other SILS libraries, however you want to word it. So you can show everybody at once, all at once, or you can say, I just want to show local copies first, and then at a click show all the rest. At a consortium your size, it might really be something worth considering. This is one of my very favorite features, Map It. It's fun if you go over to the track consortium and do a search for almost anything, and you see the whole province of Alberta almost. Well, you do. You see a whole map of the province of Alberta, and you see a push pin for every member of track, and the Map It feature is showing you how many copies are available at that branch and what their hours are today, and you can even get driving directions. So really love to show off that Map It feature. And then on down you have other bits of what we call enriched content that might come from Syndetics or Novelist or Library Thing, whatever also enriched stuff you have going on. So let's go back to our initial search. I do want to point out, you notice we're back on that initial welcome page, and I have a search prompt here that's just a text box and a go button. You have the option as well of, instead of just a blank text box, of having, and I've switched to another member of my consortium here, in addition to that type of prompt I showed you at Red Rock, you have the option of presenting the user with a search box, but then rather than just a go button, they can have buttons along here that allow them to say, I'm interested in French and anything about the French and Indian War, but it has to be nonfiction. And then I get results on down like that. So here we've done another search, started it in a slightly different way, but we get that bibliographic summary screen. You'll notice on some of the results there is a badge here for Google Preview. Anytime there is content in Google Books, then you have the option, and it is an option to display it or not, but you have the option of displaying this badge. And you can click on that and a little light box pops up, and whatever Google Books makes available, they can preview that there. So there we are at Carnegie, and we've seen how you can do some different kinds of searching. I'm going to go back to my branch, Red Rock. We've done a couple of simple searches, but it's also very important to know, and I think if most patrons are like me, you really do just kind of walk up and type, Kelowna and go. But when you need to do, and especially if you're a reference librarian or you're a patron who uses the library a lot, it's important for you to know that there are a lot of different types of searches that you can do, that we have very sophisticated searching. One very nice feature of Polaris Power Pack is we still support the good old-fashioned browse search. And in fact, browse searching in Polaris has some nice features. So if I'm going to do a search for title, for example, and we come out here and say Harry Potter, it's not a demo if we don't do a search for Harry Potter, we get an A to Z alphabetical browse list. Now, in the browse list, whenever you see a title that has multiple formats, Polaris in the browse list actually breaks it down. So over here we see Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and there are 9 total editions, and then it breaks down by audiobooks, book, and large print. And we can see there are 2 large print editions, and if I click on the large print, then I just get the 2 large print editions. In Polaris Power Pack over here, you can see the type of material by the format icon there and there. So browse searching. Now for very advanced searching, we do have an advanced option, and the thing I like about advanced searching is it's very, very capable, but it also kind of walks your hand through doing some sophisticated type of searching. For example, I can come in here, one of my favorites is to search for Shakespeare, and I hit the tab key and I type not, and I change the search to author, not Shakespeare. So I want to do a search for everything about Shakespeare, but I don't want the plays and sonnets to come up. So give me everything that has anything to do with Shakespeare, but not anything that was actually written by Shakespeare. And we say do the search, and again, there's our bibliographic summary display. Other really fun searches, it handles Boolean very well. So if I want to do a search for mythology, I've got a student doing a paper, and the teacher has said, you've got to do it on mythology, but I'm really tired of reading about Greek or Roman mythology. And I don't want to read about Norse mythology either. So very quickly, I did a nice Boolean search that is myth, and you notice here I used wildcards. Wildcards in Polaris can be used anywhere, on the left, on the right, or even in the middle. So we're saying myth, mythological, mythical, but not Greek or Roman or Norse. And we say go, and we get our searches back nice and quick. Now let's look here, for example. This is a good place to talk to you a little bit about the facets. 935 results. That's way too many to get. Now all of the searches that we've been doing so far have been sorted by relevance. The user can change that anytime she wants. Your library can also decide what you want that default sort to be. It doesn't have to be relevance. Most libraries I run into are choosing relevance, but you can have it pub date, you can have it anything you want. Even popularity. Most popular is a sort option there. So we've resorted our 935, but it's still too many to work our way through. So over here, we have our facets. So library location is a facet, and if I just want to limit my list to titles that have copies at my library, I can do that. By the way, I should mention that you see this limit by here? You have the option of setting up a limit that says owned by my library, or available now, or available at my library. So you can change this limit anytime you want. Also, you can apply that limit by every initial search. So for example, rather than searching the entire SILS catalog all the time, anytime someone does an initial search, you can have this search limit applied automatically so that all the initial searches are limited by just your location. So that's an option that's kind of nice within a consortium as well, especially like your school libraries and that. I'm not sure what the philosophy is, but you may or may not want those students, searching all of SILS initially. It's real easy, even if you have that limit on, to come in and take it off. and broaden the search back out to all material. But that initial search limiting is very handy. But the facets over here, after you've done a search, are a great way of starting with those 900 results. And now we're down to 65. And additionally, I can use any of these other facets to say, okay, now I just want fiction. And we went from 935 down to 5. Really nice feature of Polaris Power Pack is I can apply these, I can take them off. Watch how quickly we're at 65, and if we remove that filter, that quickly we've brought all 900 back in and resorted them. And if I just want to look at the 5 large print, we just put that facet on, it's back that quick. So there's searching in Power Pack. Simple searching, advanced searching. Let's give you a feel for what Power Pack looks like from the patron's perspective when they log in. So you notice I have a login prompt here, or I can come down to my account and say login or register. Polaris does give you the ability of letting your patrons register online. Typically they're assigned a patron type that gives them very, very minimalistic capabilities. But let's go ahead and come in as Amy Farrah Fowler. And once this patron is logged in, there are a lot of additional things she can do. So if I open up her My Account area, we can see right over here all of the different areas she can look at quickly. By the way, staff can leave messages that appear for patrons here in the online catalog. So as soon as she logged in, here's that message right on her My Record page. When she's looking at her record, she can move on down, and you'll notice there's most of the information from her patron registration. So if she needs to change her address, she can do that. The address is moderated by the library. She can change her email or phone numbers, and it's up to you whether the library has to moderate changes to those or not. And then make other changes here, for example. So she can say she wants to start receiving her receipts, her fine receipts and date due receipts, in email and text form. And she'd like to start receiving her email notices. Her overdue notices and things via email. So she can make those changes and submit a change request. She can look at her items currently checked out. And you'll notice here we have integrations with Overdrive. So her Overdrive ebook checkouts are right here in this list of traditional library material checkouts. Here's a 3M ebook. There's another 3M ebook. And she's got all that information there. She can renew from here. The nice thing is, you'll notice, see the red due dates? She does have some overdues. She can come down and say, oh, I didn't know I had overdues, but I'm not going to be able to make it in until a week from Friday. So this is how much money I need to bring in to cover those overdues. So that's really nice, that ability to estimate overdue fines. Hold requests are here, and again, not just traditional library material, but her requests on ebooks are here as well. If a copy of one of these had become available, you would actually have a button over here that says check out, where she could check out the ebook right from the catalog. She can cancel requests on her own, suspend requests. Here she can look at her fines and fees, and again we have that option to estimate overdue fines and fees. Polaris gives you the ability, if you want, to let the patron opt in to maintaining a reading history. And Amy has done that here, so this is her history. It includes her ebook reading as well. Now, down here, under saved searches on Polaris are really cool. Amy, I happen to know, is into neuroscience. and she checks in at the library because I know you have a whole bunch of stuff on neuroscience. And we've got that author set. Let's not, because I don't think neuroscience has written anything. Here we go. So she does a search. You have 9 titles that have anything to do with neuroscience. And she may have read them all, but says, I'm going to come over here and save this search. And we're going to call this New Neuroscience Books at the Library. She really doesn't need to worry about the rest. But what this is saying is for the next 80 weeks, she's going to get a weekly email of all the new books that meet that search criteria she typed in. And in fact, she could have said neuroscience audiobooks, because we all know they're just creating all kinds of audiobooks on neuroscience. It doesn't matter how she limited the search, how she did the search. Polaris will remember how the search was done, and every week it will do that search again and send her an email with just the new stuff since the last time the report was run. So she saves that search, and away she goes. She now has a saved search. She also has saved title lists. These are like bibliographies. So she's reading through the Kinsey Milhone books, and she's just using this as a tickler, and as soon as she has read one, she'll delete it out of this list. But you can also produce these lists in all kinds of formats. You can email them, print them, whatever. So that was a quick look at Polaris Power Pack. And again, I encourage you to go back to that tour site on your own and go look. There's a whole bunch of great new features. You can even use that tag cloud to say, oh, I want to relook at Google Maps, or I want to look at a library in production who's done 3M, who's done the Overdrive ebook integration, and preview those. It's a great tool for that. The next thing I want to do, however, is we're going to minimize the browser, and I'm going to bring up Polaris, the staff side of things, what we call the native staff client. If you probably went over to any one of the track libraries today and they were doing circulation, they would be using this software that we're looking at here. So I'm going to go into circulation from the menu bar here and say checkout. Here's what circulation checkout looks like. Now I'm going to show you a few features here in the traditional native client, the Windows application. Once I've shown some of these things to you here in the native client, we're also then going to turn around and look at circulation using the web-based client. One of the things you'll notice is the two softwares work together, and I'll tell you a little more about that later. But let's just do a checkout. So we're here at checkout, and I'm going to scan a patron's barcode, and we get some basic information. We get a picture. You don't have to support the pictures. That's up to you. But you'll notice we get some basic information about the transactions going on with this patron. This patron is perfect, doesn't owe us anything, doesn't have anything checked out. Over here, we get a summary of the information from the patron's registration. And it's really up to you what fields from the patron registration you choose to show here. We're down here ready to check things out, so I simply scan them. Got a few things here, and they go out. There is some flexibility about what fields display here and in what order. And an implementation that'll all kind of be worked out. But if that's all we need to do for Sheldon, we press enter to indicate that the session is over. And at that point, a date due receipt, I want to say slip, but actually, if you recall, the date due slip can either be paper, or it can be email, or it can be text, or it can be email and text. So at that point, whatever form the patron has said they want to receive those receipts in, if you do support multiple forms, it'll be produced. They'll either have a text or an email or print. So we're done with Sheldon. Now, Sheldon starts to walk away and comes back and says, oh, I have another question. With a keystroke, I can bring his record right back up. And what I did was I pressed the down arrow key, because here in the patron barcode field here, it remembers the 2 most recent patrons. So to bring the most recent one back up, I just press that, and we're ready to answer whatever question. And actually, the line is slow at the library, and he asks a question to help him place some holds, and it's not busy, so we're more than happy to do that. And we ask what's going on, and he says, well, I'm doing some research on quarks, and I need to get my hands on, I noticed in your catalog you have a whole bunch of stuff, and quarks are so popular here that they're all checked out, so I need to place holds on them. Everything I can get my hands on. And certainly if there are titles throughout SILS that he can't get his hands on, this is a real handy way to kind of get everything he can. So we're going to start a hold request here for Sheldon. And we've started a hold request. We're dealing with Sheldon. All we have to do is identify the material that he wants to place a hold on. When I click that Find button, it invokes what is called the Polaris Find tool. This is the staff searching tool, and you use it over and over and over on almost every context in Polaris. So we're going to do a search for quark. I'm going to use a wildcard so we get quark and quarks, and we're even going to get Quark Express computers. And there are 22, you can see right down here, there are 22 results. And I can do all kinds of things with my search result here. Maybe we want to click on the publication date. Let's maximize that so you get a better look at it. We can click on any heading to sort so we can get the newer ones first. Pretty sad that our newest one is 2001. Quarks have probably changed since then. We can click on format. If there were different formats, it would put them all together. But we go to Sheldon and say, which one of these looks good? And he says, well, I like that. I'm not interested in anything that has to do with Quark Express, but these look good. So I really need, that would be really handy if I could get as many of these as you can for me. So we say, great, and I highlight all of them. Right click, select, and now on my hold request, I have one patron and multiple titles. And we just go ahead and say, save it. And we have now created hold requests for Sheldon. We close the request, and we're right back at Sheldon's record. Let's see what we just did. When we're looking at Sheldon's record, I can bring up his status screen here, and lots of elements to the status screen, but here are his hold requests, and here are all of those that we just placed. He's first in the queue. You'll notice right here the status on all these holds is pending, which means they've already been put on whatever library's holds pull list. So some systems kind of have to wait overnight to process that request to fill stuff. This stuff is now waiting to be pulled at those libraries. Now, Sheldon does drop a bomb, and he says, I really don't need all of those because my paper is due. I'm actually doing a presentation Wednesday of next week, so I don't have time to read all of them. What I need is the quickest one you can get me. So I highlight them all, and I put them in a group. See how they've all been put into a group? What that means is when Polaris fills the very first one that it can, it will automatically cancel all the rest. So you know that situation where a patron wants to get a hold of Catherine Stockett's The Help, and you might have throughout the consortium 12 different editions. And this patron, they've got book club next week. They don't care if it's the ebook, the audiobook, the book, the large print, the hardcover, softcover, they don't care. You can put a hold on all the editions, put them in a group, and Polaris will fill the first one that it can find, first one that it can. So we've helped Sheldon there. That was a straightforward checkout. We didn't just check stuff out to him. We helped him with a hold, and he went away. Now quickly, I'm going to show you check-in. Now you see I'm not using a mouse. What I'm doing here to move between check-in and check-out is each function, each work form, check-out and check-in, have their own function key. So I've gotten used to knowing that F2 is check-in, F3 is check-out, and you can actually have both open at the same time. Close them out, bring up check-in. Now check-in has several modes. We can do inventory, we can do in-house use count. In this situation, I'm going to do check-in in bulk mode, which is very similar to using it emptying a book drop. You notice it's assigning one free day. So in other words, it's assuming we're using it in book drop mode, and it's checking them in as of yesterday. So we're going to just simply check in those same items that were checked out to Sheldon. By the way, you notice here where it says out and goes in transit to Bedford Falls. There's a copy that belongs to a different member library, and we can either have a dialog pop up and kind of hit staff over the head, or when we check in something that needs to go in transit, the printer typically will kick out a transit slip, and you'll see right there on screen. So it's up to you how much you want to be bothered, have to press keys to get past things. So we've checked all of those in, and we just notice in this nature of space and time that Sheldon left a bookmark. Well, we don't even know that it was Sheldon necessarily, although you can put the patron name on this screen if you want. That's kind of up to you. But in Polaris, if your staff have the permission, they can actually, I did a right click there, and we've come out and we're saying, let's look at the borrower who had this last. And it was Sheldon Cooper, and we're going to go down on his notes, and we're going to say, left a $10 bill as a bookmark, retrieve from the party jar. Because if he doesn't come in, it's kind of go to the fund, right? One of the nice thing about notes in Polaris is they are searchable. So if somebody leaves a thumb drive, somebody leaves an umbrella, whatever, you can do a search 6 months later for thumb drive, and it will bring up, in that example, all the notes where somebody has typed the word thumb drive in a note. So there's Sheldon's record, and I close it out, and we are right back at check-in, right where we were. So there's very simple checkout, very simple check-in. Let me very quickly, before we move on to show you Leap, do another checkout, because Sheldon was pretty straightforward. Let's say we have a patron who doesn't even bring her card in, and we do a search for her by name, and notice, you might notice this any number of ways, but notice I have a Penny and a Penelope, and they're at the same street address, and they've got the same birth date even, at the same library. We suspect there's a duplicate patron situation going on here. So let's go in, and one thing you can do in Polaris that's really nice is we're going to pop up her registration screen, and on her patron registration screen there is the ability to merge patrons. So here's Penny, and we can go back out and say, let's bring that up again and bring up our other friend Penelope. We've got Penny, we've got Penelope, we've got the records here side by side, and they all have transactions on them. And if I say go ahead and merge, then This record, the green record, will survive. The red record will go away, but all of the transactional information will get merged over. So all of her holds, all of her fines, fees, all of her items out will get merged onto the one record. So we deal with that, and we're right back where we started. We did a search for Penny, and not only does she have duplicate records, but she's blocked. And this is what it looks like when a patron is blocked in Polaris. If she owes us money, then we can go right to the patron status screen where all of her fines and fees are, and we can say pay them partially, pay them all. If I say pay all, for example, then it does the math for us, and I can change the amount if I, oh boy, change the amount if I need to, whatever. These are all of the current fines and fees. Over here are all of the historical fines and fees. And I can resort this list however I want. If I want to see all the waves together, I can just resort the list by type, A to Z, Z to A. If I want to sort them by date, I can do that. If I have a question or she has a question about any of these, she may have a question about this boyfriend clinic. Again, I can right-click and come down to links and invoke the full item record. Now, I'm system administrator on this system, so this record, I can edit this, but in almost every library in the world, we bring this up for CERC staff to see, but it's all read-only. They can't modify it, delete it, do anything to it, but they do have, if you want them to, the advantage of being able to go back and see note information. One really nice thing about Polaris is item records retain a complete audit trail for as long as the consortium decides you want to maintain history on items. We've got the patron ID maintained on each one of these transactions, but you can, if you want, have Polaris strip that out so that that link is not maintained, but still have all this other historical information. Because when we're doing something like we're doing here, when we're going back and looking at historical fines and fees or whatever, it's real handy to have all of that audit trail and all of that detail. So there's dealing with Penny. She was a problem patron. We brought up her patron status screen, paid fines and fees. This is also the place where she has checkouts, and we can see what she has checked out. We can see what she has overdue, and this is where you do your renewals as well. If she fesses up that she lost Lightning Bug, we can come over here and see if we're going to assess any fines or fees. In this case, we're going to put them on her account, and that lost book disappears from the list and moves over to this list, her list Oh Shame, where all of her claims returned, lost, accruing, lost, unpaid items are listed. So there's Penny. She's a challenging patron. Fortunately, she uses the library a lot, so we don't give her too hard a time, but we can go on and circulate material. Notice I pretty much can go right through anything I want, but virtually every stop in the system is password controlled. The ability to look at item records, the ability to bring up the last borrower, to do as I did just now and go past all of her blocks. In most situations, a frontline staff member might get a prompt that comes up and says, yeah, you can't waive fines, so please get someone to override this function for you. So this is the Polaris, what we call the native classic Polaris staff client. It is a Windows application. In your setting, fortunately, it's very fast and efficient. What's interesting about the technology here is you see my window looks as if it's running right here on my desktop on my Windows machine. I am in Orem, Utah. I'm here in the Mountain Time Zone like you all. My server is actually back in Syracuse, New York, in the East Coast. I am using a hosted session very much the way you would be. But even though this is a Windows application, it's very fast, it's very efficient. Even your northern libraries where connectivity may be a challenge, it's very fast and efficient. It works. Polaris, even in this environment, works very well in high bandwidth, low bandwidth environments. Because you're seeing it, this whole demo is being done, hosted almost coast to coast. So, the native client. Now, I'm going to introduce you to Leap, which is also circulation, but it is circulation within a web browser. So I've brought up Google Chrome. It can be Google Chrome, it can be Windows IE, it can be Safari. The beautiful thing is it can be on a PC, it can be on a tablet. It can be on whatever platform works best for you. So you've got traditional circulation workstations. Leap does everything that you need to be able to do face-to-face with your patrons. So, and one of the really nice things is you don't go from Polaris traditional and then have to do a migration to get to Leap. The native Polaris and Leap Polaris coexist perfectly. They work together on the same system. In fact, you're going to see me use some of the same examples that we just used in the native circulation. I like to explain it to people this way. A lot of us are used to using Facebook, for example, and we will use Facebook on our PC when we're at home. And we may go out with our smartphone or a tablet, and there might be a different app. It might be a mobile app. It might be just a mobile optimized browser session on our smartphone or whatever. It's the same Facebook. It's the same data. It's the same basic features and functions, just on a different platform. And that's what Leap is. Your library can choose to use nothing but Leap for circulation. Your library can choose to use nothing but the native circulation and then train everybody on Leap 6 months later. It's totally up to you. The two completely coexist. So as sort of proof of that, let's go back to Sheldon. We scan Sheldon's barcode, and one nice thing about searching on Leap is we've got that one prompt right here where I can search for patrons, I can search for items, I can search for titles. It doesn't matter. But we've got Sheldon here, and if we do checkouts to him, then we'll do a couple of these. This item's in transit to Bedford Falls. Remember when we put that in transit over in the native client? See, the data is completely the same set, side to side. So we've just checked those out in a standard web browser. We did not have to load one tiny bit of software on the PC other than the browser that already existed. You don't have to have Java. There are no bits and pieces that you have to install in addition to or ahead of. We just visited a website. Our client software popped up. The browser site popped up. We did have to use our credentials to log in, of course. But here we are. So we've checked these out to Sheldon. And if somebody has a question about any one of the titles, if I notice some damage, if Sheldon notices some damage, I can actually click or tap on an item in the list there, and it brings up an item record. One of the interesting things about Leap is it's actually the design imperative was primarily for mobile devices, for tablets. So rather than popping up multiple windows as you find in a Windows environment, you'll notice that things are kind of coming up one at a time. We were on Sheldon's record, and we brought up this item record. And we can look at the item record information here. And I can even dig down further if I, as a staff member, and again, remember this is staff functionality, have a question about history, then I can deal with all that there. If I need to pop back to Sheldon's record, it is still active. If I go over to this menu here, I can toggle right back to Sheldon where we had just checked some items out for him. If for whatever bizarre reason we needed to go over to check in really quick, I can bring check-in up. So you see I still have all of the same multitasking, but I can switch between these different work forms as I need to. Get back to my question about the nature of time and space. When I'm done with that, we can close that and go back to check-in. We're done there now, and we can go right back to Sheldon's record. So you'll notice we're using the same data, same database, all of the same patron-facing capabilities, functionalities. Do you remember all of those holds that we placed for Sheldon? Right here, we just checked out 5 items, and we can also answer any questions he has on his patron status information. So there's all those holds we placed, his position in the queue, the fact that they're waiting to be pulled from the libraries, and the fact that they're all in a group here. And if we need to do anything relative to those holds, you'll notice as I check mark a given hold, then I have all of these options, and even dealing with the grouping. So we're done with Sheldon, and we say complete. Now, I do want to show you quickly in the last couple of minutes. We like to talk about Leap being handy in 2 fundamentally different scenarios. One, we just used Leap on a Windows PC, could be a Macintosh, could be anything that supports a browser, if you remember. And I think sort of the scenario we talked about was we're here at a traditional circulation workstation behind a desk. But people are getting really excited about Leap as the vehicle that's really going to get our librarians out from behind the desk. So I can make the browser go away. I may not have Polaris anywhere near. I may, for my library, actually go out and buy a tablet. And I'm setting something up. There we go. I've got my Apple iPad here. And I've got Leap up and running on my iPad. So just to give you quickly a sense that Leap is just not for the PC, Leap now lets us hand the iPad to a staff member and say, it's that time of day when we need to pull things. It's an hour or 2 before a delivery, for example, before the delivery courier truck arrives, and we need to pull things off the shelf to get them ready for the driver. So one thing I didn't show you about Leap was over here under Utilities, we have the ability to do pick list processing. And instead of killing trees and printing out a whole bunch of paper, I just come into pick list processing on my tablet here, and I work down through my list, and as I find things on the shelf, I just tap to locate them. And you'll notice up here there's a big blue button for located. And when I tap that, the things that I found went away. One feature that I really like about Leap, and it's the same over in the other Circ desk type features as it is here, if you'll notice in the upper right, there is a filter requests field. So a lot of libraries, larger libraries especially, it's not just one person that runs all the way around the library. Let's say that I pull all adult services material, everything in an adult collection. I can go up to that filter requests bar and just type the word adult, and you'll notice now my pull list has been limited by collection. That leftmost column there where it says collection, it's been limited by adult. And now I've got a limit, I've got a list for just the material that I'm going to pull in this session. Remove the filter and we're all the way back out. Folks often ask, what does deny or ask me later means? As I'm working the shelves, and if I have the permission, I could check that letters from the country and say, yeah, that's really popular, and I haven't placed a hold yet, but I mean to hold it for somebody, so I'm going to deny that request. And if I have permission, I can click that deny button, and it will deny that request, and then this request will move on to the next library in the hunt list to find a copy on shelf. Ask me later is kind of the same thing, except instead of saying I'm never going to fill this request, ask me later says, well, it probably just got checked in and it's maybe on a sorting shelf somewhere, and I'm not going to fill it now, but try everywhere else, but if you can't find it anywhere else, put it back on my list, and maybe in another day or two it will have turned up here. We have added another button here. Again, permission based, but there is another button. The work's been done. If you come to the Innovative Users Group meeting, we'll actually show it to you. That is just next month. But it is a missing button. What a lot of libraries tell me, it's kind of interesting. They said, well, we used to like the paper lists because as we would find things on the shelf, we would tick them off with a pencil, but invariably, at the end of a day or every couple of days, we would have an item or two that we could not find on the shelf. So the list would never be totally located, you know. Well, in the next version, in next month, we'll have the ability with those leftover ones to check mark them and say they're missing. They need to go on a trace report or something. So that is the pick list processing. So we pull everything off the shelf, we take it over to circulation, run it through check-in, and that will print out the transit slips or the hold slips, whatever you need to do. But now that we're kind of bought into this idea of being able to use a mobile tablet, the world kind of opens up. So now if you're ready for ready for the idea of getting people out from behind the desk, you can take a reference librarian, you can take someone at the library and take your mobile device and answer questions wherever and however they come up. So you might be walking around and somebody says, you know, I've been looking for this book and it's called Goodnight iPad. You can just start typing and you'll notice there, in fact down there at the bottom of my suggested searching list, Goodnight iPad. So I can tap that, and actually, again, that's that same prompt where we were looking for patron information. But now in Leap, you've got one prompt that will bring up anything in the database. Bibs, items, patrons. And there you go. We found Goodnight iPad, and if my patron wants to know the availability of the items, we can tap on items, and you can see down here we've got a couple in transit and one that's out. So you've got all of this great searching, and all of the nice thing is the searching is as facile as what the public can do on their own, but it has all of the additional information that staff can get to. If I'm interested in finding out who has that out item, then we move from looking at the bib record, and it will bring up the item record. And of course, once we're looking at the item record, then we can actually go down and look at the history. You notice here at the bottom of the screen, last location, last use, all of that. And just like those other items we looked at, we can even get to, again, if you have the permission, if this staff member has the permission, look at the historical information. So you have all the information you need, whether you are in the public area at the library, whether you're out at a farmer's market, whether you're out at a community event, a job fair. You can actually be out at a job fair, take a couple of bins of books on job finding, and find new patrons. And you'll notice on Leap right there in the upper left corner, I've got a button for new patron, and we go right into the full patron registration screen. where you enter their everything, basically email, address information. You'll notice that the data fields pre-populate with a lot of information, so even if you're on a mobile tablet, it's defaulting in the city, the postal code, the province, the country, all the way through patron codes and that kind of stuff. It does a lot of the data entry for you. So I think that's about an hour for us, and we actually were able to see everything that I wanted to show you within the hour. We saw PowerPack, Native Circ, Leap, just about everything we could get to.